Dana White announced that Dillon Danis has been banned for all future UFC events.
You will never see Dillon Danis at a UFC fight ever again.
And the reason why he got banned was because he got jumped by Islam Makhachev's team.
What's happening in the back over here right now is kind of rowdy, but this is exactly what type of night we have had. We've had tremendous fights inside the octagon.
It never even crossed my mind, as stupid as this could be, that the entire Muslim Brotherhood was here tonight in the first 5 rows for Islam.
Apparently, Chanko landed the cleanest shots in Dillon Danis. Do you think that would make him more of a star?
Chanko is a good striker, let's don't talk about the shit person. We're gonna smell the shit, we're gonna still talking about the shit person.
But quickly, before we get the video started, my name is JuicyMMA, I make opinionative MMA content, and if you guys enjoy videos similar to this, hit that subscribe button, as only 10% of you watching are actually subscribed. And also, if you want to support the channel even more, be sure to hit that join button for members only live streams, best bets, members only videos, alongside with additional content as well. But anyways, let's get into it. So I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen the video already, but essentially Dillon Danis and Islam Makhachev's team were in a humongous brawl at UFC 322. I'm not sure exactly what started the brawl. Apparently, from what Dana White was saying, Dillon Danis was sitting in a bunch of fighters' seats, so that could potentially have started the brawl.
They came back and told me right before I walked out for the main card that Dillon Danis was here and he was moving around sitting in fighter seats and not sitting in his own seat that he had a ticket, and they said, do you want us to throw him out of here?
But in my opinion, I don't think it was that. Even Islam Makhachev after the fight was asked about this whole brawl and the whole situation, and essentially what he said was Dillon Danis needed to pay for the words that he's been saying about Islam and his team for the last 5 or so years. So I think it was probably initiated by Islam Makhachev's team. And actually there's been a bunch of videos that have came out about this brawl, and in one of the videos you can see John Pork throwing the initial punch at Dillon Danis, which of course turned into the big brawl that we all saw. But it wasn't just that initial brawl. Even after Dillon Danis was split up from the Dagestanis, there was another 2 or 3 or maybe even 4 additional little fights that broke out. I was actually at the event, I'll put the video in right here, but essentially it lasted for quite a while, and honestly in terms of the timing of things, it was absolutely perfect. It was right before the pay-per-view was about to start, there was a little bit of a lull, and it kind of got the whole crowd fired up for the main card, which turned out to be a really good card overall, excluding the main and co-main events, at least in my opinion. But the aftermath of the whole brawl was Dillon Danis was not only thrown out of this event, but he was also banned for all future events, as Dana White said, as I mentioned before. Also, the fighters involved in Islam Makhachev's team that were in that brawl were also thrown out of this event. I don't think they were thrown out of all future UFC events, but at least for this one, they were also thrown out, and that was the aftermath. But in my opinion, I don't think Dillon Danis should have been banned from all future UFC events, because as I mentioned before, based on the videos that have been put out and based on some of the things that Islam Makhachev and his team have said following the brawl, it seems as if they just jumped Dillon Danis. And regardless of how you feel about Dillon Danis, whether you love him or whether you hate him, I don't really think this is a great look for 1, Islam Makhachev's team, but for 2, even Dana White and the UFC. Because for Islam's team, of course, this is not the first time they've gotten into a big brawl, but also for 2, it's not really a great look when you have 10 guys going up against 1. And in this situation, at least that's what it seemed like, that Dillon Danis was by himself, and there's about 10 or 15 members of Islam Makhachev's team that jumped him. So I don't think it looks amazing for them, especially considering that Dillon Danis didn't get hurt or really have all that many scratches on him at all. But also from the UFC's and Dana White's perspective, I also don't think this looks amazing to kick out a guy like Dillon Danis that essentially got jumped by 10 different guys and ban him from all future UFC events, whereas for Islam Makhachev's team, yes, they were kicked out of the event yesterday at UFC 322, but at the same time, I don't think they are going to be banned from all future UFC events. But regardless of how you felt about this specific brawl, whether you're Team Islam or whether you're Team Danis, at the end of the day, a fight between John Pork and Dillon Danis would be generational. The striking of John Pork versus the jiu-jitsu of Dillon Danis, what would succeed in the end? In my opinion, I definitely would lean towards John Pork. I think his takedown defense is going to be good enough. Obviously, he trains with Islam and his team. I'm sure his wrestling will be good enough to stop takedowns from Dillon Danis, and if he is able to keep the fight on the feet, it's just not going to be close, if we're going to be honest. I know John Pork has never fought in the UFC, UFC at this point, but in his Dana White Contender Series fight, he proved that he has really good striking ability. Of course, he's a former Muay Thai champion. He has great kicks. He has great punches on the feet with his jab right hand. He can switch stances at will. There's just a lot of things that he does very well on the feet. And as for Dillon Danis, he's proven many times in his MMA career, in his boxing fight versus Logan Paul, as funny as that sounds, he's proven many times that he just cannot strike out there. He does have a good chin, but he cannot strike whatsoever. So in my opinion, I think John Pork stops takedowns and probably finds a finish, or at the very least beats up Dillon Danis on the feet. Now theoretically, if Dillon Danis were able to find a takedown, I do think on the ground he probably would find a submission. Regardless of everybody hating on Dillon Danis, his striking sucks. Regardless of everybody hating on Dillon Danis for his outside of the octagon antics, at the end of the day, he does legitimately have amazing jiu-jitsu, and theoretically, if he were able to get the fight down to the ground against John Pork, he would almost definitely find a submission against him. Now, obviously, with all that being said, although that fight would be very interesting and exciting for us UFC fans, putting that on the prelims of a pay-per-view or putting that on the main card, honestly, of a pay-per-view, at the end of the day, obviously, it's never going to happen. Because as I said before, Dana White has officially banned Dillon Danis from all future UFC events, and of course, that would include him fighting on a UFC card as well. So very unfortunate for Dillon Danis. But outside of the whole brawl and scuffle, the card itself was really good. At least for a 3 or 4 fight stretch, it was amazing. Bo Nickel was able to find a huge finish, although the fight itself wasn't amazing before the finish. BSD was able to find a very quick finish on Beneil Dariush. Carlos Prates was able to find a huge left hand that completely knocked out a former champion and the number 4 contender in Leon Edwards. Michael Morales was able to find a first round finish against the number 2 contender in Sean Brady. And of course, Islam Makhachev was able to find a very easy 50-45 victory over Jack Della Maddalena. So for Islam, there is a lot of options that could happen next. Of course, Michael Morales could get the shot. Of course, Carlos Prates could get the shot. Both of them are coming off huge victories in yesterday's fight card. And also, we'll see what happens this upcoming Saturday with Ian Machado Gary and Bilal Muhammad. For Ian Gary, I think he's going to need to put on a really good performance over Bilal to steal a title shot away from a Michael Morales or steal a title shot away from a Carlos Prates. But of course, we'll see how his performance does end up looking. And of course, even besides those options that I mentioned, there also could be the Ilia Topuria fight. I know Islam Makhachev and his team are calling for the Kamaru Usman fight, which in my opinion makes literally 0 sense, so I hope that fight does not happen next. But if the next fight for Islam Makhachev is Michael Morales, Ilia Topuria, Ian Gary, if he wins of course, Carlos Prates, I wouldn't be mad with any of those 4 options. But in my opinion, the first fight that I would like to see next for Islam would be Michael Morales, as I have mentioned in previous videos as well. And essentially the reason for why I want to see this fight so bad is I would like to see how Islam Makhachev matches up against somebody who would be significantly bigger than him. Because I mentioned this in my breakdown leading up to the Sean Brady fight and in videos previous, but essentially Michael Morales is the biggest guy at the weight class. And when you're talking about a guy moving up from 155 to 170, I would like to see how he deals with the size and potential power of Michael Morales. But I guess only time will tell what does end up happening next for Islam Makhachev. But those are my thoughts on the brawl between Dillon Danis and Islam Makhachev's team. Those are my thoughts on the aftermath of UFC 322, and I guess we'll see what ends up happening as time does progress. But anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Are you team Dillon Danis or are you team Islam Makhachev? But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did enjoy, check one of these 2 videos popping up now, and until the next time, peace out guys.